Hi, and welcome to Dear Art Producer. I am your host, Heather Elder, and today is March 11th, 2024. And quick shout out to my mom. It is her birthday today, and I just wanted to say happy birthday. We are joined by Madi Nauta, an art producer at Anomaly in Los Angeles. Madi likes to say she was Chicago-born, California-grown, and an Oregon alum. When she isn't producing, she is usually at home making jewelry for her Etsy shop. And she's passionate about art, podcasts, Harry Styles, interior design, and casual dining. Madi has spent most of her production career at Media Arts Lab working on Apple, but recently moved to Anomaly to work on Liquid IV, Zazzle, and Hoka. Welcome, Madi. Hello.
Hi, and happy birthday to your mom.
I know, she'd be so happy. I don't think she ever listens to these things, but if she did, she'd be so excited. She'd be like jumping up and down and like screaming and yelling that I did that. But yes, it is her birthday today, and it is a Monday, and it's sunny here in New York, finally, after a crazy rainy weekend. Are you in Los Angeles today?
I'm in LA, but it's also sunny today, and we've gotten a lot of rain, so I'm thanking God for the sun today.
Yeah, I know. I've been paying attention. My son goes to school there, and I think even coming from San Francisco, he thinks he's going to be floating away sometimes. So I'm glad you guys are back to your beautiful, consistent weather.
Me too. It's been wild. I'm not a big fan of the rain, so I'm very happy under the sun.
Well, it's so nice to have you on the show. I'm really curious. I know we mentioned in your intro that you started at Media Arts Lab, and now you're over at Anomaly. And I think it's very interesting to kind of learn about art producers' backgrounds. So I'm just kind of curious, like, how did you end up at Media Arts Lab? How did you end up at Anomaly? What did you kind of tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you into art production?
Well, I went to Oregon, and when I was in school, I was an advertising major, so I knew I definitely wanted to work in the industry, but I definitely wanted to be an art director or designer, so I was more like on the creative side of things. So when I graduated, I was immediately looking for jobs to be a creative. It was definitely really difficult. I had moved home to live with my parents as I was looking for jobs. I was working at a restaurant. I was working at a spa, just doing like a myriad of random jobs to kind of keep income in. And I had a professor email me that there was an art production coordinator role opening at Media Arts Lab, where another alum was working as an art producer. Production is not usually something that's taught in college, or at least when we were in Oregon, it wasn't. Usually we think of production when we're in college as like making videos. The producers that I knew were just the people that were making videos, and I wasn't interested in making videos. I didn't know anything about Final Cut Pro. I was like, this isn't really my vibe. I don't want to be a producer. Yes, I didn't really know anything about production, to be real. So when I, kind of knew about this art production role, I was connected with an alum, Carly DeWeese, who was working at Media Arts Lab at the time. And I kind of got on the phone with her and was like, can you just tell me about what art production is? I don't really know anything about it. I just know that there's this position open. So I'd love to kind of hear what art production is. And she just gave me a whole slew of, exactly what art production is. It's not making videos at all. You don't have to know anything about Final Cut Pro. And I was like, this is great. And I just randomly submitted my resume to Media Arts Lab for the coordinator role. And I was brought in for an interview, and I interviewed with Helen O'Neill, my boss at the time, and was my boss.
Helen.
I love Helen. And I was like, listen, Helen, I don't know anything about art production, but I'm super organized and I think I'd be really good at it. And she goes, okay, great, you're hired. So I don't know why they took a chance on me, but they did. And I ended up staying for 5 years, and I kind of worked my way up the art production chain. I started as a coordinator, became a junior, then became a mid-level art producer, and I've worked on every product, every service, every type of job that you can think of within the Media Arts Lab realm. And it's been really, really fun. It's just kind of a random job that I had never heard of, and it just sounded like something I would be interested in. So I just kind of took a risk, and then I ended up falling in love with it. And hopefully being kind of good at it. But yeah, it's been a really fun ride, and I don't see myself going anywhere else anytime soon. I'm hoping to be an art producer for a very long time.
What a great story. And what an amazing team at Media
Yeah.
Art Lab to be trained by, right? To be there
Oh,
for 5 years and surrounded by the team that you were. I'm sure you learned a lot there.
oh yeah. Like they are the reason that I stayed so long. I feel like staying somewhere for 5 years, especially in the advertising industry, it's like a million years in ad years. But I stayed
It is
because
actually.
yeah, it's such a long time. But I stayed because of that team. They're just so wonderful and so caring, and they really want you to grow and they want you to learn, and everybody there wants you to succeed. And I could not have been trained by, better people or, more intelligent people. They're just wonderful. Like I'm so grateful to have them as mentors, and I still call them every day. And I call Sarah and I call Helen and I'm like, hey,
Oh, they're so great.
yeah,
When you call them next time, tell them I said hi.
I definitely will. They're the best. Even when I'm having a problem, a personal problem or a work problem, I'm like, I need help. I need to call you. Can you call me when you're free? Like they're going to be in my lives forever. So I'm just so grateful to have had them so early on in my career. And yeah, they'll be in my life forever. Yeah.
That's great. Well, share with us a little bit about what your role as an art producer is now that you're an Anomaly, and maybe what you're known for on your team.
So now that I'm at Anomaly, my life isn't that much different, I will say. I was a little surprised, moving over. I was a little scared that things were going to be really different, or I was going to have to learn something from the bottom up. I hadn't been at a new job in a very long time. So I was very wary about what it was going to be like, but the transition was very smooth. And what I'm doing as an art producer at Anomaly is not much different than what I was doing at Media Arts Lab. The first project I worked on was for Liquid IV, which was an out-of-home billboard project. So most of the time I'm just, finding photographers that could fit the role. I'm working with production companies and kind of bringing everybody together to kind of bring the creative and client brief to life. But yeah, not too much different. So the transition is been super smooth, and we have a new project coming out shortly. Hopefully we'll see it in LA. Hopefully it'll be in New York as well, so everybody can see it. But yeah, it's been really nice to kind of be able to take the skills I've learned from Mal and producing out of home campaigns there and bring them to Anomaly to help them produce out of home campaigns. I think for Anomaly, they've done mostly, TV and digital video work a lot of the time. So there hasn't been too much of a need for photo or anything stills based for a while. So the art production team at Anomaly is very small. It's me and one or two other people that really manage stills most of the time. So I think there I'm really known as a stills person, which is kind of crazy. Rather than having a department of stills ladies, it's just me and one other person or two other people that work on stills. So I'm really known as the stills girl. I'm the photo girl at Anomaly, which is really crazy.
It's good to be an expert.
It is good to be an expert. It is like kind of wild to be like, oh yeah, I'm the one that has the answers for that. Like there's no one else to ask, but it's kind of fun, like you really get to just run your own show. And it's really given me a newfound confidence in my expertise and my role and my abilities as a producer. And it's been really fun so far.
And what would be helpful, do you think, given that you're the stills person, for photographers and reps to understand better about your job?
I think what's different about specifically working at Anomaly is that we're sometimes working with clients that have never done a stills production before, have never worked, with a budget that would be sufficient for out of home, or, don't have any sort of reference for a stills production when it comes to budgets or when it comes to timing. That's something that I have as a reference, but when we're working with clients, it sometimes takes them a little bit longer to wrap their minds around the costs of stills or the costs of an out-of-home production or the costs of even stills for social, something of like a higher quality, which is what we want to do at Anomaly. We want to kind of bring these clients a higher caliber of advertising. But, a lot of the clients that are coming to us have never done that before. So, when I'm working with photographers or agents, it's agents that are photographers that I've worked with before many times at Media Arts Lab. And we're working with clients that have done this a million times, and they know what these budgets are. They know the cost. They know the timing. So it's kind of easy going into those conversations. But I think now it's kind of difficult. We have different sized budgets. We have different sized timings. And going into these conversations with agents and photographers now, it takes a little bit more explaining to kind of get everybody on the same page, agent, photographer, and client, for them to understand, like, maybe the photographer isn't able to work that fast in the timing that the clients have allowed, or, like maybe the caliber that you're looking for, client, we need to give more funds to this photographer. I think it's kind of hard to bring everybody to meet in the middle, because there's a little bit of misunderstanding across the board on stills when there's no reference before for these clients.
So you, because you're the stills person, are you thinking that are you getting the sense that like there might not be a lot of motion projects that you're going to be working on, or is it just someone else that might be doing that? Or who knows, because you're so new?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes to all of the above. I think, who knows? I am still new, so I may teeter a little bit into motion eventually. I know that there are some other producers on the team that are working on motion. We have a full production team. I believe it's about 18 people, so it's fairly large. But of those 18 people, it's me and I think 2 other people that can focus mainly on stills and have that stills production background. And then, yeah, I don't know if they're bringing more stills work into the building and we're really going to buff that out, or if, I'm going to use my stills background to mostly focus on stills and then sometimes do motion. So it'll be kind of interesting to see over the next few months and possibly years where I'm able to go as a producer at Anomaly.
Well, and it's such a hybrid, I feel like every client is different. Every situation is different. Every budget's different. All the different places that the clients want to show up are different. How are consumers consuming nowadays, right? Where do you as a purchaser get your information?
Right.
So right. I think as that continues to evolve, I think the deliverables will continue to evolve for sure.
Yeah. And I also feel like it's easy for clients nowadays to do kind of like an add-on situation where we kind of start a production. Maybe it's just stills and they're like, oh, what if we add on a BTS, or what if we add on some motion while we're on set? And, as you already have a producer assigned to that, just having that producer kind of keep everything moving, I think it'll just kind of slowly evolve that stills producers will kind of move into motion naturally as they kind of take on these added on deliverables.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about marketing. How are photographers and maybe directors connecting with you right now? And how about reps? Like, what's the main way that they're staying in touch with you?
Luckily, I have my email across to multiple reps. So a lot of these reps get in contact with me over email, which is great. I love being contacted over email. I'm on my email all the time, so that's probably the best way to contact me. Instagram is also awesome. If you can find me on Instagram or follow me on Instagram, if you want to DM me there, I'm happy to connect there as well. But I think email is probably the best way to contact me if you're a rep or a photographer. I love doing in-person meetings. I know some people are not a fan of in-person meetings. Some people are able to do them. Some people aren't. I love them. If I can be face-to-face with an agent or face-to-face with a photographer, like that's kind of my vibe. So if you're able to, hit my email and set up a meeting, that's awesome. Even a Zoom meeting, if you're not in LA, those are great as well. I do have some photographers and some reps that reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will admit that my LinkedIn is an abyss. It is a mess. I never check my LinkedIn. I'm really horrible at it. It is like, as a young person, I should be good at all forms of social media, and I am just terrible at LinkedIn. I just can't think of it. Like I will admit that I'm just not a fan and I don't like it and I can't figure it out. So if you hit me up on LinkedIn or you're planning to hit me up on LinkedIn, I'm so sorry, but I haven't reviewed it and I won't respond and I just can't figure it out. And I am so sorry. So
We don't need to have room in our lives for every,
yeah.
social media platform. So
Well,
that's okay.
Thank you for releasing me from that burden. But I'm so sorry to anyone that has reached out on me, reach out to me on there. But yeah, I think email is the best way to get in contact with me. Portfolio reviews are awesome. But yeah, I think that's kind of the best way to get in contact with me. And I love talking to reps and hearing who's new on their team, hearing who's new on their roster. That's always great. I'm always looking for new photographers and even new directors and new artists to look out for. The bookmarks tab is always growing. So yeah.
It's interesting. I always talk about the idea that like, if I ever lost my computer, that would be terrible, right? Or my phone, that would be awful, but
Yeah.
everything's in the cloud. If I ever lost my bookmarks, I'm
Yeah.
not quite sure what I would be able to do.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That recently happened to, I'm going to expose her right now, but Nikki O'Toole, who I think you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We were in the office. This was at Mal, but we were in the office one day and something happened to her computer. It like broke or something. And usually that's like a normal fix and it's on her bookmarks tab on Safari. So it should be connected to her keychain or whatever and everything should be fine. But she got her computer back and her bookmarks were just gone. And
that would just kill me.
No, it was horrible. And it was really sad. And it just kept being brought up because it was just really horrible. And then we all had to figure out how to save our bookmarks and export them because we didn't want that to happen to us. So if you're listening to this right now, this is your friendly reminder just to export your bookmarks tab and just save them like once a month, once every couple months, because you never know what's going to happen.
Wait, I did not know that's a thing. You can export your bookmarks tab?
Yes, you definitely can on Safari. If you have it on Chrome, I'm not sure how to do it on Chrome yet. I haven't figured it out. But you can export your bookmarks tab to like an HTML or a document and just save it somewhere. So if you haven't done that, definitely do it.
Oh, I'm going to do that. Okay, thank you.
Yes, because you never know.
You never know. That would be terrible.
No.
Okay, so backing up again to Instagram. You said if you can find me on Instagram, follow me. And, and oftentimes creatives and art producers talk about how they use Instagram in terms of what they say is that they often go to it. So I'm imagining, you're interested in a photographer. So you go look for, Joe Smith photographer on Instagram and you find them and you look at the work on them. But how do you use Instagram if you don't have a specific photographer in mind? Like oftentimes creators also say, I discovered somebody on Instagram. I found them. I was scrolling. I was looking. Like to me, that's if you are an artist who wants to get attention on Instagram, the algorithm doesn't always favor just because I follow you or you follow me does not mean that my work's going to show up in your feed. Right. So how else are you utilizing Instagram so that you can maybe allow other new different things in?
So this will often happen when I'm actively doing searches for new artists or new photographers. But my favorite thing about Instagram is there will be these like random accounts that just like celebrate artists or will repost artists' work and tag them just because they like appreciate their work. And this oftentimes happens with like editing apps like Visco or Tezza or any of those apps. So if there are any photographers that are using, some type of app on their phone to edit their photos, tag those apps because those apps will repost your photos if they like them. And I love to go on those apps and just find really good, awesome photos. And oftentimes there's really good photographers attached to them. I've found really awesome up and coming photographers on the Visco, just their Instagram feed. So sometimes there or editorial Instagram accounts will have them. And then I think like personally on my Instagram algorithm, I'll kind of trick it, and I'll actively like and participate and comment on photography that I really like and artists' work that I really like, so that when I'm going on it used to be called the popular page, but I don't, the little search page, I don't know what it's called now, but the one that just like shows you photos that you might be interested in, where you can like search hashtags. That one, I'll go on that page and I'll get to see like more photography that I enjoy and I look at. So I'll kind of like trick my algorithm into showing me more of that photography on that page. I will say though that creatives tend to be a lot better at finding creators on Instagram than I am. I don't know what it is, and I don't know what they're but they are much better at Instagram than I am. I will find photographers and artists, I think, more like on the internet or using reps web pages, or, web pages like Vice, or, more inspiration web pages. I'll find photographers there than I would on Instagram. So I don't know what creatives' magic is of finding photographers on Instagram, but they do a really great job of that.
I need to ask them more questions. Yeah, I'm interested as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so backing up again to the email messages that you mentioned, obviously not just a regular email like I'm sending you like a quick hello email, but the more marketing related kind of email blast sort of emails that you get. Mm-hmm. Are there any messages that you find are more effective and useful that kind of rise to the top for you?
Honestly, I think the simpler the email, the more inclined I am to open it and the more inclined I am to read through it. If it's more catered towards me, like if it says like, hi, Maddie, check out this new photographer on our roster. They're really great. You can see some more of their work here. Thanks so much. Love this rep. That is super simple, super directed, has a call to action for me where I can just click on the link and I'm like, oh, this photographer is awesome. Add to bookmarks. That took me 30 seconds and I just found a really awesome new photographer. And, that's done. It was a great part of my day. I feel like sometimes the emails are potentially too long, or they're too full of links and pictures and too much marketing. I think sometimes that I kind of get lost in the sauce a little bit. And I'm like, I don't really know what the call to action is. And I'm a little lost and I don't really know what I'm supposed to click on. I don't really know what they're telling me. And then I get overwhelmed sometimes. And then I forget what I'm doing and what I'm looking at. And then I go to the next thing. So
I can appreciate that. It's like the shiny object. It's like you've got an email come in and then your text beams and then all of a sudden you've got a, DM in your Instagram. It's just like, you're just like, oh my gosh, wait, I have to focus.
Yes. And like, don't get me wrong. Like I appreciate a beautiful, well-crafted, colorful marketing email. Like I love that kind of thing. But I think like right in the beginning of my day, when I sit down, I've got my coffee and I'm like going through my emails, I've probably got like, I don't know, a million in the morning that I'm just trying to get through. And if I'm hit with just a really simple one, it's a couple sentences with 2 links, I'm like, oh, easy. Open it. Easy. Really awesome photographer. Cool. Next email. I think those are the best ones that kind of catch my mind. Maybe it's got 1 preview photo in it. Cool. Love that. That's perfect.
Talk to me a little bit about the type of artists that your creatives are asking you to find for them now.
I feel we used to get this question all the time when we were at Mel. And I think it's the hardest question to answer because every project is so different. You would think like, oh, we're just looking for beautiful lifestyle imagery. And that would be like kind of the blanket answer. But sometimes we are looking for the craziest things. Sometimes we're looking for food photographers. Sometimes we're looking for, car photographers that can shoot in the winter of cars that are on the ice. Sometimes we're looking for a photographer that can shoot on strings. Like sometimes we're looking for like the wildest things. And I'm like, I couldn't even give you a direction of what creatives are asking me to look for. Sometimes I'm looking for a photographer that doesn't exist. And I'm like, I think that this photographer could maybe do it, if we used our imagination. So sometimes it's kind of a crazy ask, but ultimately, like the recent asks have been a photographer that's really into color and a photographer that has the ability to shoot in studio and shoot outside. I think that's been the most requested photographer recently, is a photographer that's super into color and a photographer that can shoot in studio and a photographer that can shoot outside. They kind of have to be comfortable with all of those items. Of course, clients are kind of looking for photographers who are nimble and can just shoot a bunch of stuff and get the most amount of assets. That's always what they're looking for. I always want to be the person that kind of takes them off the edge a little bit, to be like, shooting super quick and super fast is not always the right way to do it. Picking photographers that are, take a little bit more time to set up and pose shots and be thoughtful about their shots might give you better assets. Quantity is not always better than, quantity over quality is not always better. I think it's dependent on the approach. So, but we've been getting requests for a lot of color. We've been getting requests for studio and outdoors. Lifestyle is always a big thing. Photographers that can shoot both lifestyle and beautiful portraits. That's always great. A big one has been photographers that are really great at capturing movement in their photography. So not actually.
Well, it's funny that you said that. I've gotten a couple of requests for that over, in the new year.
Yeah. So not actually like photographers that are capturing like motion, but photographers that are like capturing movement, like really feeling like energy behind their photography. Mm-hmm. That's like a really big one, especially when we're capturing like products or product photography and talent behind the products. Like I think clients are really wanting to feel energy behind their products and motion behind their products and, really bringing a humanizing element to the product. So we're really looking for those photographers that bring motion. I'm seeing a lot more photographers that do have that in their work. So I think the message is getting across. I think that's been some of the most popular requests recently.
When you get to the point in the process where you have kind of narrowed down a list of artists that you want to share with your team, not necessarily that you want to bid with, but like you've gotten the request from the team to go do some research, you found the list. How do you go about sharing that with them? What's that process look like?
I know it's different for everybody. I've gone through a little bit of trial and error to figure out what creatives like. Some creatives are different than others. I feel like talking to creatives is sometimes talking in different languages. You kind of have to figure out what's best for each creative team. Sometimes creatives like, putting a deck together of the photographer and a few images, and some creatives are simpler. What I've found to be the most effective and what's kind of gotten across the best is kind of just doing a list of a couple photographers. We don't want to saturate this list too much by having too long of a list. I think, anything under 10 is usually great to try and get, the most productive feedback from the creative so that you can keep going on with your search. But this list is usually just done in an email, and I usually just do a link to their website and a link to the photographer's Instagram, and the creatives can go check out what they want to see. But that's usually been the most effective way to send lists to creatives.
And at that point, when they kind of review all those links, do they usually come back to you and want to learn more about a particular photographer, or is that kind of reserved for the creative call? If they're like intrigued and interested, then they go on the like consider it or on the like bidding list, and then they dig deeper, if they're chosen to bid.
I mean, sometimes it kind of depends. So if they're really liking somebody, they'll come back and they'll be like, hey, is this person based in LA? Or do we know how this person lights? Or have you ever worked with this person before? Like, how are they on set? So I think that's kind of the most popular question is if I've ever worked with this person before, or do I know anybody that has worked with this person before? And I think that's why I kind of like meeting in person with the photographers as much as I can, why I like doing portfolio reviews. Because if I haven't worked with that person, I can at least vouch for their personality or their vibe, or, I can ask those questions that I think creatives might ask when they respond to those lists to that photographer in person. Like, do you work with a lighting tech? Do you do your own lighting? Do you shoot super fast on set, or are you slow and, more posed with your setups? How do you like to shoot on set? So, I can kind of anticipate those questions that creatives are going to ask if they, respond to that list. And then sometimes they come back and they go, I like these 3 people. Let's talk to them. And they're really fun.
Is there anything on a website that you find really helpful?
I love a really artful website. I think they're great, but I love a quick snapshot of work. I want to see like an overall look at your work. The most images I can see at a time is fantastic. So if you have like a quick button on your website for like thumbnails or, archive or overall photos where I can just look at everything at once, or, I can see everything super easily, almost like a contact sheet, that makes my life so easy.
I like hearing about that. I've got a little eye on my website on each photographer's homepage image that if you click on the little eye, it gives you like a little snap, a little quick view.
It's so helpful. Some photographers have like images on their website and they're moving around, and I love it. Like it's super engaging and it's really different. But when I'm trying to promote a photographer to a creative, and I'm trying to show them this photo and it's like moving around the website or moving around the page, I'm like, wait, I need that photo to come back. I need like a button so that I can just see all the photos at once, or show them a campaign on the photographer's website where I'm like, this campaign is really awesome, isn't it? Wouldn't it be perfect for our campaign that's coming up? So just being able to like see everything all at once, like in a still format, is really awesome. I really love that.
And what about the creative call? Like we all know how critical it is. And I think, we've been doing it long enough that a lot of people probably shouldn't need the advice, but I just feel like it's such a crucial part of the process. Really? I think you can't, give advice enough. What advice do you have for artists? Is it okay? Sometimes they can't be on camera because they might be at an airport or they're on set, or, does that hurt them? Is there, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of recent examples of things, but let me know a couple from you, like what you think is, helpful and what's hurtful.
Yeah. Echoing creative call is always super important. I think like lean on your art producers to ask questions ahead of time. Like they know these creatives more than anybody else. So like if they feel like if this photographer is in an airport and potentially can't be on camera, it's completely okay to ask the art producer like, hey, I'm in an airport, I can't be on camera. Is that going to be okay? Or like creative's not going to be okay with that? I'm totally happy to reschedule. The art producer will be totally honest with you about what that's about and if that's okay with the creatives. The art producer wants you to succeed on this creative call. They don't want you to bomb this by any means. So they're going to want to help you and put you in a situation where you can succeed on this call. So they'll be honest with you, and it's totally okay to ask questions. I think it's better to be on camera if you can. The more that we can get to know you, the better off your chances are of succeeding. I think just seeing people's faces in general just allows us to like come together as a team and just, be more humanized.
And it's so normal now, Yeah. So I think it's really great to be on camera.
Totally. And I feel like during a creative call, asking questions is awesome. Like, please ask us questions about what we're looking for. Please ask us questions about the campaign. The more questions that we get, I think the more helps us develop the creative as well. Sometimes having an outsider in the conversation helps us kind of like open our brains and be like, oh, we hadn't thought of that before. Like, that's actually a really awesome question. And it's almost kind of like a pre-treatment. So when you're asking those questions, we're like, oh, like that's an interesting approach that we never even thought of. Like, that would be really awesome. So,
one thing that I'm seeing happening out there, which is really interesting and a bit frustrating, is a lot of times we don't get to see the creative until the call. They might send us a couple of screen grabs, but we won't get the deck until the call. Yeah. And that's really hard because we don't get a chance to really consider and think about an approach. We're hearing it for the first time. So our questions are just a bit superficial, I think, in those situations because we haven't had a lot of time. And I understand like sometimes the deck is just being finished, and time is crunched. But I think trying to get the most out of that time really does require some preparation.
I mean, that's great to hear. Like knowing that you guys need that time ahead of time is super good to know. And I totally hear you. Like, I feel like sometimes creatives don't always understand that, but coming from the art producer and like I said, like we want you guys to succeed. So as early as I can get that creative deck, I'm like, I need to get that to the photographer so that they can see it beforehand. But I know that some clients too are like so confidential with things, and working at Mel, I know that was always a struggle of like wanting to send this to prep a photographer, but not always being able to share ahead of time really any details on anything.
Yeah. No, I remember that working on Apple. That was always very interesting.
Everything was a blind side. So we're just really keeping everybody on their toes. So, but yeah, I think it's really helpful to know that, you guys need that time to prep at least questions and prep a response to
just to be very thoughtful. Like you guys have worked really, really hard on this campaign, obviously. And sometimes it's been in the works for months and months. And, for us to just see it for the first time on a Zoom where it's not always the easiest to see on the camera, on the screen anyway, and being asked to react or to have an opinion that's going to determine so much. I know the treatment comes after that, and that's a bit more extensive. And I do find that a lot more people are allowing us to present our treatment as well. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit of another chance to kind of schedule in some time to talk about our approach, which is great. But yeah, it's an interesting trend that I'm seeing. So I'm trying to use this Dear Art Producer podcast as an opportunity to kind of put it out there in the world and remind people that, we would love to see them work a little bit more ahead of time than the creative call.
Well, that's awesome. Like, thank you for the reminder. It's always great.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, what about treatments? I mean, that's such a hot button issue right now. And I just am curious from your experience at Mal and your experience now at Anomaly, are they valued by your clients? How much do your creative teams, want them, need them, read them, all of that?
I think treatments are incredibly important. I will always fight for a treatment if we have time for it. A lot of times the time is squished. We never have time for a treatment, but we always want one. The creatives always read them, at least the creatives that I've worked with, they always read them. And we always use them in our client presentations to either sell through a photographer or promote a photographer and explain why we need this photographer on board. The photographer's lighting approach and including that in a treatment is always super important for us in explaining how we're going to approach the day with the client. And then oftentimes I've done treatments where we'll pay a photographer a certain fee to test for us ahead of time and include those testing images in the treatment so that we're able to kind of, give the client a taste of what it would look like if we went with this photographer. And it really gives us a look at exactly what we're going to get. And it really helps us. And I think it helps the photographer a little bit too in developing their approach in actually shooting this campaign and taking a stab at what the brief looks like. But I will always fight for a treatment if we can. But I do think that treatments are, as you said, like we're talking about treatments a lot lately because, a lot of time and effort are put into these treatments and are given to the clients. But, it's not always the photographer is going to get the job. So, what's kind of your perspective on this? I know some agents are charging for treatments and, in some cases, I think this is totally fair. I know it's definitely difficult to explain it to clients sometimes, but would love to kind of hear your perspective.
I appreciate you asking. And it is definitely, it's been a conversation that's been a long time in coming. And I think the industry's really open to having the conversation right now. I sit on the board of the AMA, which is the Artist Management Association, and we've been spending a lot of time, we've been dedicating a lot of time to coming up with kind of treatment best practices for agencies and studios. And we're not the only ones out there doing it. There are other, associations and organizations that are also trying to kind of even the playing field a bit, because what's happening is, the artists, they're not getting as many at-bats as they used to. Mm-hmm. So each time they get asked to bid a project, they're going to put their all into it, right? And that sometimes means a lot of time. That sometimes means a lot of money. Obviously, the collective time of everybody who, from the producer to the stylist to the production designers to the reps to the artists themselves who are spending time on these treatments. And then a lot of times you don't get any feedback, or you don't get a chance to present it. And I think the biggest challenge is that we don't have direct access to the client.
You're right.
So we're having all the conversations with you, and we're hearing from you what the client wants. We're sharing our treatment with you, but we don't get a chance to show our personality and our approach and all of our vision to the client directly. So, and a lot of agencies maybe might not share the full treatment, or maybe won't share the treatment, or who knows what the client's going to choose based on, because they've got 3 really amazing choices, right? So it makes it a very, I think morale in our industry has suffered a lot because of it. You're putting in all this time and effort, and a lot of times the email back is just, so sorry, we went another direction. So there's not even a chance to learn, and a lot of times you don't get a job having nothing to do with you or any of your efforts. It's just some random reason. But I think art producers and creatives think they're protecting you when they say, we went in another direction, when what I really want is the hard conversation. Well, you didn't, that creative call didn't go well, or somebody showed a lot more emotion in the creative call, or, Jane had the exact shots we were looking for. They were able to give us more value for the bid. Like things like that will help me on the next one. Hearing that you went in another direction and then kind of ghosting me when I'm trying to get more information from you leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth. I think that's hard. And I think the other thing that's happening, and I love to hear that people are starting to charge, because we're starting to at least bring up the conversation and charge when we can. And I see some agencies paying 2 out of the 3. So if whoever wins or is awarded the job, the payment is the joy and the not just the joy, but the financial reward of getting the job.
Right.
But the other 2 artists who didn't get the job, there's a little bit of money that's put aside at the beginning from the budget that goes to them for the treatment. And then they at least feel like, okay, if I had to hire a writer or a designer, like I can pay them for that.
Right.
And it didn't come out of my pocket. Are you sorry you asked me? You gave me a big soapbox there.
No, that was great. No, I'm so interested to hear, because I think, as an art producer, we really only, sometimes we only get the bid of like, we'll do a treatment for you. Here's the bid. And we're like, okay, great. Yeah. We'll take that to the client. We'll see what we can do. But we don't always get the why or the explanation of what the photographer is going through. Or, as an art producer, luckily I was trained by wonderful women who are like, if you do a treatment with somebody, you call them after and you explain why. You don't just send an email. So that is always, what I like to do. I don't just want to send an email to someone, especially if they took the time to do a treatment for us. But it's interesting to hear that, feedback is wanted and important for you guys. And I know depending on the client, like some clients are, more confidential. So there's not always a ton of stuff that we can share as to why or why not someone did get the job or who got the job instead. I know some agents do want to know that, but knowing that feedback is wanted and is helpful, like I'm happy to provide that. I know it's no, it's
not. I think you should think about it as like currency.
Yeah.
Right. Like especially if we're not getting paid for the treatment,
right.
And it's not your job. It is 100% not your job or our expectation that you're there to teach us anything, right?
Yeah.
But I think we go into the job so blindly a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I do sometimes sit on creative calls with multiple photographers, from our group might be on the job, on bidding the same job. And it'll be interesting to me that both of them, let's just say there's two, will be like, oh my God, that was such a good creative call, and it's great. And then all through the process, they'll be like, oh, I think we're going to get it. This is exciting. And, not that they're jumping to conclusions, but the messages that they're getting are positive because they're doing a good job and people like them. And, but both of them think that. And I always think like the job could go any way, but they in those situations, they are both getting so excited because they think it's going their way and it's very positive. And I'm not saying that anybody did anything wrong in this and they shouldn't be getting people excited.
Right.
But the point is when everybody's really talented and the team is excited about all of their choices, that artist is invested and feels really excited about it.
Right.
So to not get a job, like they've already produced it in their mind. So to not get it, they're really let down. And if you can think about like, not that you have to make them feel better, but like, just like give us a second, or like I've always said, just give me one more sentence. If you just gave me one more sentence, that goes so much further than like we went in another direction.
Totally. I mean, I will say like that is the worst part of my job is having to call people and tell them that they didn't get the job. Like it is the worst. So if I can make that call even as like a little bit better by being able to give you guys, valuable feedback or give you guys more explanation, that just makes my job even a little bit better, just by being able to give you guys something positive out of that phone call,
I agree, right? Because it's a sucky phone call to make and it's an awful one to get. But if our conversation can be constructive, then I'm leaving the conversation to go back to my artist with like, okay, you didn't get the job, but here's what they said, right? And this is what we can take on to the next job as opposed to, an email that just said you didn't get the job.
Right. Right.
So I don't know. I think the more like we said at the beginning of this section or this part on talking on treatments, it's like the industry's finally having conversations about this. No one was talking about it before. And I just do think it's such a positive conversation about pushing our industry forward totally for all of us.
Yeah. So. I think that they're really valuable. And I think that I'm glad that people are talking about how valuable they really are and putting a monetary value on, treatments themselves and the work that's put into them. And I hope that we continue to do them because a lot of times I've worked with photographers that have done a treatment that potentially didn't get the job, that I've then used that treatment that they've made to help them get another job that,
Oh, that's so good to hear.
Yeah. Where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that they didn't get this job. But there's another project that comes up that I'm like, oh my God, they would be perfect for this. Creatives, check out their website, but also check out this treatment that they did for this other job. Wouldn't they be perfect?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh my gosh,
no, that's great.
Them. Yeah. So even though the treatment might not be right for that job, I now have this amazing treatment that they did that I can use as a supplemental element to like selling them through to creatives for other jobs. I think is like really awesome. And then potentially they don't have to like redo everything again because I've already sold them through to creatives.
That's the first time I've heard that. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. I think, as long as you're working with a producer that, really wants to fight with the photographers, fight for the photographers. No one wants to fight with photographers, fight for the photographers. I think like they're going to use all of the elements in their power and, really scan through their websites and pick through things to make sure that they're finding things that creatives really want to see to show them why they are the right photographer for the job. We want everyone to come together in a very specific way to make sure that not only that the work comes to life, but we want to have a fun time on set. Like we want to have a good
Definitely.
time. We want to be like, this creative would jive so well with this photographer and their work is perfect. Like, let's get these people together. It'd be so fun.
Well, this was an amazing conversation. There's so many things that we didn't get to touch on because I think we kind of elaborated on some other important topics. So I loved that. You were a fantastic guest. But before I let you leave, I always ask people the same two questions. I'm very curious what your favorite thing to do is on a Sunday. And if you weren't a producer, what would you be?
My favorite thing to do on Sunday, if it is sunny, is to go to the beach and read a book. I just want to lay there and read a book, and then I want to come home and shower and take a nap. I just want to lay down and do nothing.
I love that. If you have any good book suggestions, please send them to me.
Oh my gosh. I read horrible books, like written terribly. Like nobody wants to read the books that I read.
Me too. I like all the thrillers. I have a very good friend of mine who we laugh all the time because we say we like to read the books that People Magazine reviews.
Yes. So that's my mom. We read like terrible crime books that like everybody are like, this is 3 stars. It's written terribly. I'm like, that sounds perfect for me.
Yeah. Yep. And I think it's because our lives are so hectic in other ways. Yeah. Like, if I have to take on such a hefty book, sometimes, I definitely have to have some light reading in between. So, okay, well, we'll have to share. I have a whole notes app of all the books I've read in the last year or so. So I'll send it to you, Maddie.
Yes.
Okay. And if you weren't a producer, what would you be?
I always say that once I'm done with this job and I've worked many, many years, I'm just going to move to the middle of nowhere and I'm going to buy a farm and I'm just going to have a bunch of llamas and I'm just going to do crafts in my farmhouse and take care of my farm animals and do nothing. I think I
love that too.
Nice, peaceful life with my llamas and in the middle of nowhere. I think it'll be great.
That's great. There's a farm in Vermont called Golden something. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, they have they have like hundreds of like golden retrievers.
Yes.
Right. And it's a working farm otherwise, but like you can go there to visit these probably 30 Goldens. I don't know how many they have. They have so many of them. And that's what my daughter says all the time. She's like, that is literally going to be me, Mom. I'm going to go and start a farm for Golden Retrievers. I'm like, that sounds amazing.
Me and your daughter will be emailing them in a couple years to see if they have any open positions because that's what
exactly. I know. Oh, it sounds amazing.
I love it.
Well, anyway, this was lovely, Maddie. It was such a great conversation. I appreciate you giving me an hour of your time today. And I hope your week, it's only Monday, but I do hope that it's filled with lots of creativity and interesting things. So thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much.